So is it possible that the church is even partially responsible for the mortgage crisis and endless wars and overpriced medicines? We're going to investigate that thought today. Hi, I'm Tim Kaiser, and this is Sola Melodica, where we discuss, react, review, and reflect on music of all types. It's my belief that God has given us music as a gift, and in all types of music, God is there, even when it may not seem like it. So today we're going to look for, uncover, and expose in a positive way a glimmer of God in the music. Today we're going to start with a song called The Prosperity Gospel by Mudhoney. And so it seems as though the Mudhoney is making an accusation that the church is partially responsible or fully responsible for some of these antics. So today we're going to review it, listen to it, and see if there's some truth to their claim. So here we go. Before I get started, this is a salty lyric song, so if you're adverse to certain language, you've been warned. Before we get into the next set of verses, let's first of all, this is Mudhoney is a band from the Pacific Northwest. They actually are one of the originators of the grunge scene. So all the grunge bands you've heard of, Mudhoney was right there at the beginning with them. And actually, their front man, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, and if you know it, please drop it in the comments. But he's actually credited in many situations for coining the term grunge, which that's a pretty cool thing to do, right? But Mudhoney sounds more punkier, I guess that's the word I want to say. More punky than the more popular grunge bands like the vocals particularly remind me of something like Sex Pistols or Black Flag, but it definitely a really cool sound. So first of all, he drops the F-bomb, the very first word, so there you go. And he's making the accusation. He's setting up the problem, right? He's saying that we're basically screwing the planet, we're screwing our children to get rich and to win. And then he goes into some very specifics. He's like, build prisons, pack them in, mortgage crisis, steal people's homes. So he has a valid point on some of these things. So prison facts. We actually, in the United States, we have over 2 million people incarcerated in this country, and we spend over $7 billion a year on prisons. I mean, it's a whole cottage industry, if you will. Mortgage crisis. That's brutal. That was, some of you may not even realize that happened. It was a while ago, but over 10 million people lost their homes during the mortgage crisis. And if you're a movie buff, I totally encourage you, if you've not seen the book or seen the movie The Big Short or read the book, do so, and also Margin Call. They give you an insight into some of these issues that you may not be aware of, and it's frightening, right? So, but how is the church responsible for this? So the song is called Prosperity Gospel. We're going to continue on and find out.
Price gouge medicine, let it be death. Get rich, you win. Manufacture weapons, let it be more death. Get rich, you win. Prosperity gospel, prosperity gospel. Get rich, you win.
All right, so there he goes again. Now he goes into price gouging medicine and manufacturing weapons. So let's talk about price gouging medicine. Now, this is price gouging. Whenever I hear somebody use that term, I automatically think that they don't know economics. They really don't. But is medicine too expensive? Yeah, probably. It probably really is. But it's a little more complicated than what you can figure out in one verse of a song. And to blame the prosperity gospel or the church on that, I don't know. It's yet to be seen. Manufacture weapons. This was a huge one, really. The United States spends more money, or the same amount of money, or close enough, to the United Kingdom, Japan, China, India, Russia, France, South Korea, and Brazil. So all those countries combined spend the same amount of money that the U.S. government spends on manufacturing weapons, or the military-industrial complex, as President Eisenhower called it. So, we spend entirely too much money on defense, and it's not really defense, right? We're not really defending anything in most situations. We just have a huge part of our budget goes towards that. So, but again, how is the church responsible for prisons, mortgage crisis, price gouging medicine, and manufacturing weapons? So let's continue on and hear the chorus here. I'm going to back up just a minute too. Okay, right now it's probably hard to hear the words there, and most lyrics online, they get this one totally wrong. What he's actually saying is there's a loophole in Davos, and Davos is it's a 4-day meeting of all the great minds, quote unquote great minds, when it comes to financial issues throughout the world. They meet every year for 4 days, and if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're probably believing they're planning how to screw over the populace. Or if you're more of a person who just believes everything is true, they're there to make things better for us. But he's saying there's a loophole in Davos.
Got a giant needle. If you can pay the price, I'll let you ride a camel through the eye. There's a loophole in Davos. They got a giant needle. If you can pay the price, I'll let you ride a camel through the eye. Prosperity gospel. Prosperity gospel. Get rich. You win. Fuck off.
All right, he likes to end it with another F-bomb, so he's not totally against war as long as it's dropping F-bombs. So here, let's go. There's a loophole in Davos. They've got a giant needle. If you can pay the price, they'll let you ride a camel through an eye. So now he's actually starting to, the writer of the song, or the writers of the song, are starting to actually integrate or input Christian biblical imagery into the song. So I'm glad they did. So now we can talk about it, right? So he's talking about Davos. We explained that already. Now he's talking about a giant needle and camels. So there's actually a scripture in the Bible, and it's in Matthew 19, where there's a rich young ruler. This rich dude comes to Jesus and asks him, "What must I do to be saved?" Right? And the question was disingenuous. If you read it in the spirit of how it's written, people are like, oh, he gives him a lot of things to do. But the question was, this guy thought he was perfect, right? And we all know we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Your mom is not even perfect, right? So none of us are perfect. So Jesus asked him, what does the law say, right? What do you have? What can you do to, inherit eternal life? And we get into that issue a lot in our lives where we think, oh, if I just a better person, I can make it into heaven. Well, guess what? You're not. I'm not. No one is, right? So he gave him some tasks. He said, what does the law say? He says, don't commit murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't bear false witness, honor your father and your mother, and love your neighbor as yourself, right? And he says, well, I've done all those. It's one of those things where you just wish the liar, pants on fire situation was legit, and boom, the guy would like spontaneously combust. But it's not, it didn't. But Jesus kept poking, right? He kept poking at this kid, and he found that thing in his heart that was keeping him, right? His idol was money, right? His hang up was money. And then he he talked about that, right? And then he's like, Jesus said the kid went away sad because Jesus like, well, you basically can't, if you can't sell all you have and give it to the poor, you can't be my disciple. Now, this is not establishing a covenant or a doctrine for everybody to sell everything and give it away. That doesn't make any sense, right? This is a very specific situation for a very specific person who happened to love money. He refused to do this, and he had basically said vamos to Jesus and his disciples. It kind of threw the disciples off. They asked a question, and he's like, who can get into heaven? And he's like, and Jesus told this is truly I say to you, it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I say to you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Right? And then the disciples like, oh my God, who can get into heaven? Right? If rich people can't. And he goes, it's with people, this is impossible. With God, all things are possible. So here's the imagery that they pulled this song from. And fun fact, a couple of these guys actually met at a Christian high school. Yeah, so they have probably enough biblical knowledge to start thinking about this, right? So here it is. He's actually making the accusation that the church, or let's say prosperity gospel, is the cause of these things. And I would, in many ways, tend to agree with the writer of the song. Let's listen to some more of it. Let's back up a minute and hear a few seconds of it, and we'll go into the last part and talk some more.
Prosperity gospel, get rich, you win, fuck off.
I didn't go back far enough. I went back just enough to get a third F-bomb, so let's try this again.
If you can pay the price, I'll let you ride a camel through the eye. There's a loophole in Davos, they got a giant needle. If you can pay the price, I'll let you ride a camel through the eye. Prosperity gospel, get rich, you win, fuck off.
Okay, so how does the church, how is the church responsible, culpable for some of these things? And I said I have a tendency to agree with him, and here's why. The church is called to be the salt of the earth, right? We should be the ones holding people's feet to the fire when it comes to things that are not really biblical or godly in nature. And unfortunately, in many situations, the church has been tangled up in some of these things. So instead of fighting for people's rights, for financial breakthrough, whatever, we're taking that on our own often and living large at the expense of others, right? So, and it's not really a social gospel thing, because that's not me at all, right? So, but we have to live according to the book to 100% degree, right? So, how are we helping people? How are we preaching? How are we the salt of the earth, and not trying to be combined with all these social issues or situations that are straying from the Bible and making our own plans up? And here he's saying, they have a loophole in Davos, and they're basically saying they can pay to play, when we should be setting the standard based on the good book, based on what Jesus said, based on what's in the Bible, and not what's easier for us, right? It's really simple. And Jesus said in Luke 14, towards the end of that chapter, he says, if you don't give up all for the kingdom, you can't be his disciple. And we often, unfortunately, regrettably, do try to be in both sides. We try to be in the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of this world, and we have to do better, right? So, so let's finish this song out. One last thought before we close this thing down, and that's a good song. I think I like Mudhoney's sound. I love the fuzzy of the guitar, the fuzzy sound of the guitar, and the punky sound in vocals. It's a good mix. But here we go, the prosperity gospel. So it's easy for us to judge others, and somewhat wealthy is a relative term. So usually we consider somebody rich or wealthy if they have more money than what we have, right? So just for us in the United States, if you're here in the States, and usually most people in the States are doing relatively better than most people in the country and other countries. But half of the world's population lives on about $250 a day, right? And a person who earns minimum wage in the U.S. and works full time is richer than most people in the world. So here's a couple examples. The average annual salary in Romania is like $13,000. In Thailand, it's a little over $7,000. And in Ukraine, it's not even $5,000. So if we're, it's easy to pick on the rich young ruler and say, hey, he's rich and it's hard to get in the kingdom of heaven. But, when it comes on Judgment Day, we're not going to be, it's going to be, you're like, well, that person was rich. And it's like, most likely, if you live in the U.S., you're richer than most people in the world anyways. So let's be really cautious when we're judging people based on that and say, oh, that's just rich people, that's how they are, when most likely you're actually in the grand scheme of the whole world, you're one of those rich people. So there it is, Mudhoney Prosperity Gospel. Hope you've enjoyed it. If it was something that you enjoyed, please like it, share it, subscribe, and we'll have a new video coming up in a few days. Blessings to you.